Now, turning to our program, I'm pleased to welcome Milwaukee Press Club President and my new best friend, Mary Ann Lazarski, to introduce our speakers today. Mary Ann.
Thanks, President Saj. Yeah, we're becoming good buddies. Here I am again today, and again, it's good to see all of you here. Today is the last program in conjunction with the Milwaukee Press Club, WizPolitics.com, and Wisconsin Eye, featuring candidates running for election on April 1st. We will hear from Brittany Kinser, candidate for State Superintendent, as she sits down for a discussion with Jeff Mayers, president of WizPolitics.com. Incumbent State Superintendent Jill Underly was invited to speak, but her campaign said she wasn't available. Per our protocol, we invite the two main candidates and proceed with the candidate or candidates who accept the invitation. As we welcome today's speaker, I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone of the importance of maintaining a respectful and fair environment. Our goal is to provide a space where candidates speak openly and equally. By doing so, we continue Rotary and Press Club's traditions of thoughtful dialogue and civic engagement. After Ms. Kinser answers questions with Jeff Mayers, again, I will moderate questions from the audience, so there are cards on your tables. So you can write down your question and please bring them to the AV table here in the center to Aaron before 12:50. So that's before 12:50. Again, Jeff Mayers will conduct today's interview, and he is president of WizPolitics.com, an online political and government news service in Madison that operates WizPolitics.com, WizBusiness.com, WizOpinion.com, and other news services. Hope I got them all there, Jeff. All right, a little bit about our guest today. Brittany Kinser is an independent education consultant and former president of City Forward Collective, a charter and voucher-focused Milwaukee nonprofit. She was director of Wisconsin Rocket Ship Schools, part of a national network of public charter schools. She also taught special education in Chicago and was a public elementary school principal. She holds a master's degree in educational leadership from Columbia University Teachers College, a master's degree in designing science curriculum from the Illinois Institute of Technology, and a bachelor's degree in special education from Eastern Illinois University. In her free time, she loves biking through Wisconsin's scenic country roads, trail running, reading great books, and traveling across the U.S. to hike and visit with friends. Please welcome Wisconsin Superintendent candidate Brittany Kinser for some brief opening remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Thank you so much for welcoming me today. I am Brittany Kinser. I am running for State Superintendent of the Department of Public Instruction. As it was said, I have been in education for 25 years, my entire career. I first was a special education teacher in Chicago Public Schools for 10 years. I also worked at the district level under Arnie Duncan at the time when he was superintendent. I was an award-winning public school, charter school principal here in Milwaukee at the time. Governor Evers, when he was Superintendent Evers, gave me an award for beating the odds. Then I was the CEO of City Forward Collective, and now I'm running an initiative called 95 Wisconsin. So this time last year, if someone would have told me that I would be on the ballot for state superintendent, I would have said, there's no way. I was just starting to plan my initiative called 95 Wisconsin. So this is what got me into this race. So the fact is that 95% of children can learn how to read well enough to go to college and have a career as long as they receive phonics in the early grades, and we use the science of reading to teach our children how to read. So 95%. Right now in Wisconsin, we have a reading crisis. Really, we have a reading crisis across the country. And according to our nation's report card, we only have 3 out of 10 children who are reading well enough to be college and career ready. 3 out of 10. And here in Milwaukee, we have the worst results for our Black children. The worst. we only have 5% of our Black children reading well enough to be able to go to college or have a career. This is a crisis. And so I started this program where we provide one-on-one tutoring to students who have fallen behind by certified teachers. It is a program that is working in Oakland. Steph Curry is now my favorite basketball player. I'm sorry, Milwaukee Bucks fans, but he and his wife have been providing $35 million just to Oakland, where he is from, to provide one-on-one tutoring. That's working. Kids who did not grow, have not grown in reading since COVID, are growing 2 years in one semester. So when I found out about this program, I said, oh, we need to bring that here. Our students need this tutoring now. So I'm working with Open Literacy to bring the one-on-one tutoring, working with 5 schools here in Milwaukee. And then I go in and help make sure the school leaders are supporting their teachers and teaching phonics in the early grades. We cannot tutor our way out of this problem. We have to make sure that our children can learn how to read in the early grades. Really, it's after first grade. If they're not reading well on grade level by end of first grade, it is very, very difficult for children to continue on, go down a path to be able to read. Just think about words when you're in kindergarten, first grade, much smaller, shorter words, and then they get harder as you go into second and third grade. So I started this program, and I reached out to the Department of Public Instruction to tell them about it because I wanted to make sure we could spread it around Wisconsin, and they were interested. They acknowledged that we were, the results were not okay, right? I don't think any of us would say that they're okay. We're in a crisis. And then in August, so when we were talking, because I was planning this back in around this time last year to August, and then in August, I found out that Superintendent Underly had lowered the benchmark for what it means to be reading proficiently in Wisconsin and not to be aligned with the nation's report card anymore, which Governor Evers at the time had set about 8 years ago to make sure that we had high expectations. I could not believe that they would do that because that's not what helps our kids. We have to acknowledge the problem and come up with a plan, support our teachers, support our kids. So I reached out and asked, what happened? Like, what is going on here? We've been having this conversation. I didn't know this was happening. And I was told that a group of 80 experts came together to change the standards. And I said, 80 experts? We don't have 80 experts in Wisconsin for assessments, unfortunately. And then I found out later that they signed non-disclosure, so we don't know the process that they used. So then he said to me, we were texting, he said, well, we weren't even aligned to the nation's report card. And I said, yes, we were, and I sent him the links. We were a little bit below in 4th grade, so we could have actually raised expectations. And then I was told that I was just too angry. Brittany, you're just too angry. And I said, well, I think that if more people knew only 3 out of 10 children are reading well enough to go to college and have a career, and then that you all are lowering the benchmark to make it look like more children are reading well enough, I think a lot more people would be angry. And he was right, I was angry. So I put my phone down and I went for a run. I think he said it's one of the things I do. I live in Wauwatosa. I went for a run over in the forest exploration area. And that's like where I get quiet. And I was just I say prayers, and I was praying, and I said, what can we do about this? Why would we do this? Why would we try to make it look like our kids can read when they can't? And some kids who would have been eligible for tutoring are not going to be eligible, but they still can't read well enough. And then as I was running, it popped into my head that I should run for state superintendent. I've never run for office. I've knocked on some doors, but I've never run for office. And so I went home after my 3-mile run. It hadn't gone away, and I reached out to some friends. Some people thought I was crazy. They're like, "Are you crazy? That's a statewide, election. There's going to be a lot of people not happy with you, running." And but then others were like, "You should do it." So I had to find a campaign manager. I had to raise millions of dollars. This is a very expensive race. And I could not find anyone. This is from August to December. So I thought, okay, I am just going to go ahead with 95 Wisconsin. It's a great initiative, right? Well, and I also had to get, so if you don't know this, you have to get 2,000 to 4,000 signatures if you're going to run for statewide office. And I only had a month to do that in December. Well, December 12th, a principal from Milwaukee reached out to me and said, I heard that you're not running for state superintendent. Who is going to be the voice for our children? He got me in the heart because that's what I care about. And then he said, I'm going to introduce you to someone. And one of his supporters called me and said, hi, Brittany, my name is Rob. You don't know me, but I have 50 volunteers. We're ready to get you signatures. You need to run for superintendent. And I was with my sister, and she's my youngest sister, and she's never in town, but she was. And she said, you need to do this. You wanted to do this. Our dad had passed away about 6 years ago. She's like, Dad would want you to do this. And so I did it, and I signed up with one kindergarten teacher, one of my former kindergarten teachers. She was very brave. And then it all came together, and I have, Amy Loudenbeck, who's here. She knew me from some of my work, and she called to see if she could help me get a few signatures. I said, well, I need help. This is going to be a lot of work. And she said, let me call you back. And then she did, and now she's my campaign manager, and I have a team. And I have been traveling around the state. I've been to almost 40 counties now, put on 12,000 miles in less than, I think today is the 100th day I was counting. It's only been 100 days. My whole platform is on restoring our high standards because our children deserve so much better. We need to refocus on teaching reading, writing, and math so all of our children can have a meaningful job, go to college, or master a trade. We need to make sure that we are partnering with our parents. They're our child's first teacher and lifelong champion. We need to make sure that the billions of dollars, we spend billions of dollars on education in this state, that the billions of dollars are going into the classroom and rewarding our great teachers and ensuring that the Department of Public Instruction is transparent. It's innovative and predictable so that 95% of our children will be prepared to read well enough to be successful in our world. I also support school choice. I believe it's important that our parents have the ability to choose the best school for their child. So thank you so much for having me. I know Jeff is kind of giving me the signal. He's going to come up on stage. Took a little longer than 5 minutes, but thank you all so much.
Oh, I think we did okay. Don't worry about it. Well, how's it going so far? A week.
Only
1 week out. How you feeling about this race?
I am feeling, does it sound okay? Okay. I am feeling really excited. People have been asking me how it's going and maybe answer one of the questions. It's been really wonderful. I think in these times there seem to be that we want to be pitted against each other. But the thing that I can tell you is I've been traveling around the state, whether I'm way up in Rhinelander or down in Kenosha, everyone cares about their children. And they are worried about the education of our children, whether I'm talking to a grandparent, a parent, a school board member, school districts. Everyone cares about the kids and they want to make sure that our children are getting the best education possible. And reading is something everyone can get on board with. No one has told me they don't want our children to read, thank goodness.
Okay, so this is officially a nonpartisan race, but it's very partisanized. So you have said you're a moderate, but then there's a lot of Republicans who support you, the Republican Party, in fact. Does that make you uncomfortable because you're cast as the conservative Republican in the race?
So I'm very thankful for all of my supporters. I'm thankful for the Republicans, the Democrats, the independents who have supported me. The same day that Governor Tommy Thompson supported me, endorsed me, Democrats for Education Reform endorsed me, and Dr. Fuller all on the same day. And so I am the candidate for the kids, and I really appreciate that the people who are supporting me, we align on values that we want to restore high standards, and we want to make sure our kids are reading.
So you're not following the usual path way, right? Most state superintendents have been superintendents of school districts. So what makes your background what makes you think your background is suitable for what is really a big administrative job, running the Department of Public Instruction?
Yes, so I am definitely outside of the box when it comes to what has been traditional, the status quo. But I don't think the status quo is getting us where we need to be. I don't think anyone would say that 3 out of 10 children reading well enough is acceptable. And I don't think what's happening here in Milwaukee is acceptable. It's a crisis. And so I think my experience of being, working in traditional public schools, starting a school, working in City Forward Collective, where I was able to build relationships and get a bill that was supported by the GOP leadership, 5 Democrats in Milwaukee, and our Democratic governor, is really key. We have to build relationships across the state to get things done for our children. We have to have those conversations because, some people are asking me about some of my supporters. All of my supporters have children or grandchildren or nieces or nephews that they really care about. And so we all have to be working together.
Okay, so what bill is that you're talking about, though?
Act 11,
Okay, which is
the bill that has
boosted the funding for private schools and
it boosted
charter
the
schools?
funding for all public schools. So every public school got money. So it was a very large boost for the next 400 years. And then, yes, there was a boost for children who receive a voucher and then children that attend charter schools. And there was also money for mental health. There was also money for other things that aligned with what Governor Evers wanted to do too.
Right, so that was signed by Governor Evers last year. So when you talk about Milwaukee Public Schools, and you were a principal in Milwaukee Public Schools.
Charter school.
Okay.
Not the traditional Milwaukee Public Schools.
Okay, so how would you grade Milwaukee Public Schools right now? What grade would you give them?
Right now, I mean, they're failing their children. Like right now, we knew that we had the financial fiasco last year. Then we see the results with our nation's report card. Now we have lead in our schools. I don't understand that. So when I was authorized, so rocket ship was authorized through the city and through UWM. And every year you have to have lead testing before you can open up the school. And when we bought a building that was a little older, we had to do lead testing, and there was a fountain that was too high in lead. So you shut it down, you take it off the wall, you do not let anyone use it. So some of the processes are not there. The things that we do in other schools to keep our children safe are not there.
Okay, so what's the biggest issue? Is it the leadership? Is it the way the district is set up, or is it the socioeconomic factors affecting the kids who are in the schools? What's the biggest issue that leads you to give an F to the Milwaukee Public Schools?
Well, I look at the results for kids, and that's why I give it an F. When we look at it, when you have 5% of Black children only reading well enough, we have lead poisoning, right? That's an F.
So but why? What's the biggest issue driving the lack of success?
I think it's the system, it's the governance, it's the leadership. So I'm excited that we have a new superintendent. We all need to support her because her success is our children's success. So we need to make sure that she has the support she needs by the school board and the community. No, not yet. No, I've been a little busy.
That's okay. But
I hope to meet her. If I am honored to be, if I get elected, she'll be definitely on the top of my list to reach out to.
Okay, so do you think that breaking up the school district could help? Some people have said, let's break it up into smaller pieces. Would that help?
I have not been behind that. I'd be open to that if that's something we all, the community wants, because this is a local control. But I think that would actually cause more bureaucracy and more. But again, if that's what the community wanted, I'd be supportive, as long as we could show that kids would have better results, that kids could learn how to read. They're not going to be poisoned by lead, all of those things.
Okay, some have also proposed the state take it over. Should the state take over Milwaukee Public Schools?
I think that could be an option if things don't turn around.
So I mean, how long should the new leadership have before some state sanctions or state interference occur?
I'm hoping that the new superintendent will create very clear goals on what she wants to see with operations and academics and financials, and that she can meet those goals. And I think if we continue to see, not turning in your financials on time, kids not growing, more lead poisoning, I think that's where the state would have to really possibly step in. I mean, this is a crisis for our children. They deserve so much better. As you said, there are children living in poverty. Like, they deserve the best, right? It doesn't matter where you live. You deserve the best school system.
Well, yes, and how much of a factor is that, though? I mean, schools are asked to do a lot, right? Especially in places where there is high poverty. I mean, are schools being asked to do too much? Is that part of the whole problem with Milwaukee Public Schools? Is that it's serving this population?
Yes, I do think schools are asked to do too much, right? They're asked to be the mental health providers and all of the things, right? There's all these other things we're asking them to do. So we need to be partnering with organizations that are experts in certain things besides teaching and learning, to partner with our schools. I know as a school leader, I partnered with an organization that came in and provided the mental health support for our students and families, because our school teachers are not, very few if they did some kind of job change, but we're not trained in that. I think that we need to get back to focusing on teaching reading, making sure we're supporting our children, making sure kids are coming to school. There's different plans that work, and we need to make sure that we're incorporating those.
Okay, so is money an issue?
Well, I think that when we look at, Milwaukee Public Schools gets a lot of money per child right now. It's one of the top in the nation, I think top 5, but don't quote me on that. I can go back and look. But it's in the top for cities. However, special education is significantly underfunded. And so I have that on my issues page. You'll see that I said I want to make sure we have an increase. We also, around the state, if we're looking outside, I know we're in Milwaukee, but outside of Milwaukee, there are schools that districts say that they are underfunded. And so we do, as I've traveled across the state, people have asked me, please be a leader in modernizing our funding formula. It is 30 years old. It's complex. You sometimes have to have someone who's a business specialist on, to understand it. So I have agreed to be a leader in that, to work with the legislature and the governor's office, have people around me that understand it.
Okay, so what are some of the ideas that you have to change the school funding formula? It is very complex. It's become more complex over the years because there's special aid for certain districts or for certain classes of students. So, I mean, what are your ideas to change the school funding formula?
So as I've been talking with people around the state, I've realized it is, besides reading, it's the funding, right? And so I don't have all the answers yet. I think it was an easy answer, would have been figured out. But we need to look to states across our country that do a better job of funding their schools. It's less complex. I would hire someone to help me do this work, because I am not a financial expert in school funding. And so we would have to look and see what they're doing in other states. There's like 30 states that.
Okay, so what state is doing it right?
So if you look at funding in Florida, Washington, D.C., and Colorado, they all have similar models that we could look to. But like I said, we could provide ideas. The legislature and the governor have to sign it. I'm not a lawmaker. That is something that I think people talk about this role as if we're a lawmaker, and we're not.
Okay, but when you're the state superintendent of schools, you do propose a budget and then the governor adapts that to his budget. So Governor Evers, the incumbent wanted $4 billion for schools. That's about what the current estimate of the state surplus is. And Governor Evers came in with about $3 billion. Is his number right?
I'm not sure if either of them are right. I would want to see, can we work to make sure we can pass something for that benefits all of our students? The $4 billion with the entire surplus, that'd be the entire surplus. So that means other issues wouldn't get any of that money, which of course education is my issue, but we have to be realistic and taken seriously when we put a number out there like that. And so I don't know if it's right or wrong with the governors, but I know that I haven't created my own state budget. I just got in this 100 days ago. But I would want to make sure that it's something that is possible, because you want to be taken serious by the legislature and the governor. So
Okay, so when the governor made his pitch, unveiled his budget, he said there were too many referenda. That all the referendums for operating budgets by schools was a warning sign. They needed more funding. They shouldn't have to go to taxpayers for all that. Do you agree with that?
yes, I agree with that. And I've been hearing across the state. Everyone's going to referendum. So that's why I said we need to modernize it, figure out how much we do need. I don't have, like I'm going to say, I don't have the answer to it right now.
No, but we're exploring, how you're, because you're saying that the school funding system's out of whack. Okay, so I guess you're agreeing with Governor Evers that referenda is a warning sign about that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, but now, so if people can't go to referendum, if they don't go to referendum as much, would that take away taxpayer control? Because some Republicans have argued that.
I don't know about that. No one's asked me that question. Does it take over control?
But my job is to
I
ask
know.
you questions you
So,
have not been asked.
Can you write that down so we can look into that?
But they say that's the ultimate in taxpayer control is to vote in the referendum on whatever. And so
I think I know representatives have been hearing from their constituents also, because as I'm traveling throughout the state, they know that people are feeling the burden of their taxes going up. When I was getting signatures back in December, so if you're ever running for an office and you need signatures for a spring election, at City Hall, there in the lobby, there's going to be a line of people paying their taxes, and so I was able to talk to 500 people. And there were so many people upset that their taxes had just gone up because they weren't able to afford it. People who are retired or people where their businesses not doing as well this year. And so you could see the real life implications of when taxes go up like that.
okay, so I think what I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm wrong, that you think we rely too much on the property tax to fund our schools.
I don't know if we rely too much, but right now we're asking for more and more and more every year is what I'm hearing from people across the state. I don't know if I can say too much. I haven't thought about that as much.
Well, because if you don't rely on the property tax, and there's not, then you have to rely on state general taxes, right? Then you have to rely on the sales tax or the income tax. So is that what you're suggesting when you're suggesting we modernize the system?
I think you have to do both, but I'm not suggesting. I don't know. Like I'm telling you, I'm not an expert in that. So I promise to learn more about it and try to find the best way for our communities. But I don't want to say something that I'm not an expert in it yet. But I promise to have experts around me to answer these questions that you're answering, talk with Republicans, Democrats, independents, anyone that owns a home that has children worried about their kids. So making sure, I think because it is so complex, people have stayed away from it, and I promise to lean in and figure it out for our communities. But I don't have the answer yet. Those are good questions.
Okay, so now back to voucher schools and private school choice. The state, there's been a lot of criticism. Some of it's come in this campaign and some of it from the incumbent, but also from Democratic lawmakers about state money going to private schools. That's taking away from public schools and leading to the what some perceive as a funding crisis or the public funding school system being out of whack. So are you comfortable with state money going to help private schools?
So that has been a law for 30 years? So this is a state program. And as superintendent, you have to follow the law. And so I have been talking with schools across the state, and they've been expressing their concern about what happens when families decide to use a voucher to go to a different school. But I've pushed back with them. It's like, well, have you talked to the families who are leaving? Why are they leaving? What do they need for their children? I feel like that's also, we're pitting families against schools, and That isn't what should be happening. We should be listening to our families and asking, what is it that you need for your children? Why are you leaving the traditional public schools? And so they also get, like in Milwaukee, if it's a elementary school child that goes to a private school with a voucher, they get much less than Chicago, or I almost said Chicago, than Milwaukee public schools. They get about $6,000 or $7,000 less. And so that program has been on for 30 years going. This is something that almost half of our children in Milwaukee use. They're living it. Many of them are living it, at socioeconomically disadvantaged communities. And I want people to also understand, like, these are people we're talking about and children, not just a voucher. And so I support our families. If you go out and you go speak in the community to families who are using a voucher program, why they're using it, and for so many years, I'm supportive of that for them.
So you think it deserves a permanent? It is a state law, but and it was expanded under Act 11, in which you advocated for. So you just think
I lobbied for it. We can say the word.
I can say lobbied for it, but well, your opponent has labeled you a lobbyist. But that's
Yeah,
why
I said lobby.
that's a little joke here that maybe
It's a
not
joke.
everybody gets. So, are you a lobbyist?
I am not currently a lobbyist. I was a registered lobbyist when I was working for City Forward Collective. It is the law. Everyone should know this. If you go in and ask for something from your legislature, not your representative, but others that are not, you have to register after a few. I don't remember how many hours it is, 4 hours or something. It is against the law not to. So I was proud then to be a lobbyist for children and their families, children in Milwaukee. So many special interests. I'd be in rooms with special interests they all have lobbyists, lots of lobbyists. And I was proud to be there representing our children and their families. But I'm not anymore. And then one other thing, it stays up there on the, I don't know, the website, the lobbyist
The
website.
Ethics Commission.
The Ethics Commission, but it's up there that in 2023, that's when I registered. It doesn't go down. So I just want to make sure that's clear. That's just how they run it.
Okay, so your opponent has also hit you for lacking certain licenses to practice in Wisconsin. So I guess why don't you explain why you don't have the license she was referring to?
So when I looked up what did I need to run for state superintendent, you don't need a teacher's license or an administrator's license. We're not trying to be a teacher or a principal in the school. You don't need that. You just need to be a citizen of Wisconsin. So when I was a special ed teacher in Illinois, I had my special ed license. When I came to Wisconsin, I was a principal, so I needed my principal license. I had my license from New York because that's where I got my master's, and one in Illinois. So when I came here, it was pretty difficult at the time to convert my license from the other states to Wisconsin. It almost caused me not to move here, and that happens a lot. It's not easy, and it's something I've been talking to superintendents across the state to please make sure that we can have different licensing, because some of their top performing teachers, when they say top performing, that means they're looking at their students' results, are people who are like an alternative certification, and it's been a huge struggle. And so I had my license when I was a principal here, and then it expired, I guess, this past summer, and I didn't get the notification. They had my old email. Anyway, so we paid the $185 a couple of weeks ago just to get it, because it was important to some people that I had it. So I have my administrator's license. I don't need it for this role, but I have it. It's just I had to fill out some paperwork.
Okay, so we were talking before, this is a tiny part of the education system in Wisconsin, but some parents choose to homeschool their kids. Is that a legitimate choice for a parent?
Yes, parents are allowed to homeschool their children, so yes.
Okay, but as a former special ed teacher and as a former teacher and somebody who ran a public charter school, do you think that's a good choice for a parent?
So it depends on the parent. So if they wanted to educate their child with homeschooling, that is an option for them. And there's a very small portion of our population that is doing that. So.
Okay, Now, there was a story at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel website today about are you aware of that? About the virtual school? The Academy of Excellence?
No, I didn't see it. I didn't.
Okay, so.
Sorry,
okay, no, you're busy. But at any
I've
rate.
been really busy today.
Okay, anyway, the report is that because there is because private school choice is allowed to be virtual, because there was a court ruling during COVID. So this one school, Academy of Excellence in Milwaukee, which receives $40 million of state funding in a year, they say that the report cites this as being close to homeschooling, and that it's serving 3,800 kids, and there's criticism of that school. Does that does that bother you as an educator, that this virtual school that's getting this much state money may be crossing the line into homeschooling?
I would have to look into this school. I did not read the article today. No, I was not made aware. Sounds like there's some controversy there.
Right. So the State Department of Public Instruction says, well, they can't do anything about it because there's not a law that regulates virtual voucher schools. So do you support the concept of a law to regulate that?
I would have to look into that. I mean, I'm assuming there's some kind of regulation. I guess if they can't stop it, it seems like they're following the law. Is that? I'm sorry, I don't know enough about it.
Okay. So when you if you're elected the state school superintendent, you will also serve on the UW Board of Regents. Okay. So are you concerned at all about the Trump administration's efforts to cut certain research funding and to, I guess, leverage certain demands of higher education in order to get federal funding? Does that bother you at all?
I would want to make sure, I've said for K through 12 when I was speaking, we need to make sure that we get all that money that's promised to us to ensure our children who are in special education, that's the funding we get for our special ed students, making sure the money that we get for our title money, all of the money that our schools are getting now, we need to continue to get that money. That has
So we're
to full
talking
stop.
about the Department
Right.
of
So I just want to make
Department
sure.
of Education now. Okay, go ahead.
I want to say that because I feel like I've been questioned on that before. So I want to make sure I say that. We have to get that money that has been promised to us. I believe that, funding for research is also important. I haven't been following that as much, but I think that's really important. Making sure the nation's report card is still in place and being funded is also very important. So yes. Okay,
so do you have, well, let's just talk about the university funding. So research funding is important, but if they're cutting this is a subject of a lawsuit from universities against the Trump administration. Do you agree with the thrust of what the Trump administration is doing on the research money front?
If they're cutting the research, I think research is very important. So I would say, I don't know enough about it, but I would say we would need to fund research.
Okay. What about then the dismantling of the Department of Education? The state and the governor, the State Department of Justice, led by a Democrat, and the governor here in Wisconsin have joined other states in filing suit to stop what they call the dismantling of the Department of Education. You said that you want to make sure we get all our money, but does the dismantling of the Department of Education, does that endanger the money?
I have been told, so when I heard about this a couple months ago, I guess maybe longer than that, during the presidential election, I reached out to some people. I'm like, what does that mean for the money for our schools? I'm coming from it as like a school leader and someone who's working with our schools. We need that money to make sure our students are getting the education and we can run our schools. I was told that the money would be going through other departments. And I've been reading about that too, that money is not going to go away. And so I think it's really important that we continue to have the money come to our schools. But also what I think is really important, if they do dismantle it, we need to have someone strong at DPI who can work across the aisle. I know that the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, has already visited other states. She's gone into the states. New York is one of them, has visited schools. We need to have someone who's having these conversations so that Wisconsin is not forgotten. We need to be making sure that we're at the table speaking about the needs that we have here, whether it's in the colleges or in our schools.
But, okay, you've talked about special education money, which the feds and the state have historically underfunded special ed. Governor Evers wants to take it to 60%. And so, do you agree with that number, by the way, that to take it to 60% instead of about 30%?
I mean, it would be great. I was talking to superintendents again about this. Of course, 60%. And I would like it not to be a reimbursement. I would love it to be that same year because schools spend. So one year I spent $1 million on special education at my school. The next year we got reimbursed at $300,000. But then we also had more costs coming in for our special education students. So 60%, yes. But I would also again would like us to look at how are we funding our special education. Reimbursement is also another outdated way of funding special ed. So I think we can do a whole new way of doing it. Yes, 60%. And I talked to superintendents across the state. They said, even if we get 45%, that would be a huge jump. So we need to have an increase.
Right, but the feds are also supposed to fund a lot of that. Again, through the Department of Education. So,
and I've been told that we'll still get that funding. We have to have that funding. Okay. I will advocate for that 100%. Like we have to. I will have the hard conversations. I will, make sure I'm talking to people across the aisle. Who are the decision makers? Jill Underly said she's going to sue the legislature. I'm like, no, don't say that. Like we need to, if I'm not a superintendent, we need someone in there that can have relationships with the legislature. If you're going to sue someone, that's not starting on the right foot with them, right? It's going to be really hard to have a conversation.
So you think she's too political?
I think it's not. It is, if you want to be an advocate and you want to build relationships, you should not threaten publicly to sue someone.
Okay, so our time is almost up here. So we're a week away here. And again, this has become a very partisanized environment. And you're in the other race, right? The top race is the state Supreme Court race. Brad Schimmel was here recently. Does Brad Schimmel have to win for you to win?
I don't know. I mean, I don't.
Haven't thought about it?
Since I'm new to all this, people are like, how are you going to win? I'm like, I need people to get out and vote for me. And so I need people to vote for me. That's how I win.
So your path to victory is?
My path to victory is to have as many people as possible to win the state superintendent race. So that's why I'm traveling all across the state. Right,
but you're backed by the Republican Party. Underly's backed by the Democratic Party. So you're trying to reach out beyond the Republican Party, I assume, for a lot of people who may not count themselves as Democrats, right?
I'm talking with anyone who will talk with me.
Even me.
Even you. Not after today, though.
Yes. All right. Now it's time for questions.
First, I want to thank all of you for your questions. I mean, this is the first time in a long time that we've had so many questions, and I know time is of the essence. We'll try to get through as many as we can. So here we go. There have been a record number of property tax referenda statewide. Do you agree that the legislature has underfunded schools, and what will you do to ensure schools have resources they need?
So, like I had said up here, I promise to be a leader in modernizing the funding formula. And I do believe that there are too many people there's too many referendums, yes. So I agree that I will help with modernizing the funding formula. Some schools are funded differently in each of all throughout the state. And some school districts like Milwaukee Public Schools gets a lot of money per kid, but then there's other areas where they're not getting as much. And so I promised I don't have the answers right now because I just got into this, but I promise to work with experts, to work with the legislature and the governor to modernize our funding formula. So hopefully we don't have to go to as many referendums in the future.
It's terrific that you are all about high standards, but how are you going to meet those standards, especially with MPS?
So I've said that, well, thank you. I'm glad you're aligned, whoever said that, with high standards for our children. I have said that we will have a team here, an office here, working with MPS. I really believe that if we can implement Act 20 in a way where making sure our children are getting research and evidence-based phonics instruction, supporting our teachers, ensuring they have the support they need to teach our children. I tell this story. I went to be a special ed teacher 25 years ago. I graduated, and I was a K through 12 certified teacher. And I realized when I got out of college that I didn't know how to teach reading. Just because you know how to read doesn't mean you can teach it. And then I realized I was not taught how to teach reading. I had to take additional courses and training. And then we find out many teacher colleges, majority do not teach our teachers how to teach using the science of reading. And hopefully that will change. So making sure that the teachers have the support in teaching using the science of reading, making sure that school leaders have the support they need, make sure the school board is holding our our districts accountable. I want to also create a dashboard that's really clear on being able to find the information we need. DPI right now, the website is very difficult to navigate. If you look at other states like Louisiana and Alabama and Mississippi that are all outperforming Wisconsin, southern states are outperforming us. If you go to their websites, it's much easier to navigate and understand and get information you need. Indiana, I was also looking at their website recently, much easier. We need it to be user-friendly so that anyone can navigate and find the information they need.
Okay, sticking with MPS, is the fact that MPS has to accept all kids, but voucher schools do not, have an influence on positive outcomes of MPS?
So it's an interesting question, but I think that we should be able to work with all of our students. I was a special ed teacher. My charter school I opened, we had 20% of our students were in special education. We're able to focus on teaching all of our children. And so I think we need to accept everyone and make sure that our public schools and make sure that they're getting the services, sorry, I'm just thinking about this question, making sure that they're getting the education that they deserve. So, and I know there are private schools that have students with special ed and special needs. I've worked with some, I know some of those schools.
What is the difference in Milwaukee in reading scores between charter, voucher, and public schools?
I don't have the data in front of me. There are people in here who do have that data. I don't have the data to provide, but with the nation's report card, they looked just at the MPS, so not with the charter and private schools. That's why we need to make sure that our forward exam is aligned to our nation's report card to ensure that we're able to see how our students are doing. But that information is available on DPI's website.
Results at Rocket Ship have not been strong. What will you do differently as a leader of schools across the state?
Yeah, so I've told this story, and I'm fine with this. Like our first 2 years, we were using phonics and the science of reading. We got away from that, and you could see the results for students went down. We were using Rocket Ship was using a teacher-made phonics curriculum that had worked at some of the schools, but not all of them. It's really important that we're using research and evidence-based curriculum. They've gone back to using that. I think in the last, I haven't been there for now a couple of years, but they've gone back to using the science of reading and making sure the teachers have the training they need.
How will you work with public schools and their teachers who may be leery of your support for charter and choice schools?
How will I work with them? Oh, I think, again, it's going and showing up. Like I've shown up to all of these forums. I've gotten, it's me, which has been, I get to come and speak with everyone. I think I've shown that I will come and speak with anyone, take the hard questions. I've met with superintendents across the state, and this was my second time with Jeff. So I'm willing to have the conversations and show up and listen and be responsive. I've had follow-up meetings with superintendents from rural areas up north because they wanted to get to know me better, and I think that's really important. And that's what I'll do with teachers too, right? Like make sure I'm there, I'm present, I'm listening, being responsive. If I become state superintendent, it's really important to me that all of our children are getting the best education possible, and that means working closely with all of our schools.
Are more kids in special education today than ever before? And if so, why?
I don't know if I don't have that statistic. If someone has that, if there's more than ever before. And so, there are some schools where students get over-identified, but I don't have that statistic right now in front of me.
What's your opinion about this, how successful students are along with parental involvement? A lot of children may not have parental involvement or guidance like other children do. So what is your opinion about how important parental involvement is to the success of a child in school?
So I think parental involvement is very important. It's key. Doesn't mean that every child may have a parent, but as long as they have a parental figure. So some of our children are growing up with their grandparents or with aunts and uncles, but we know from research that as long as a child has a caring adult in their life who shows up for them and loves them, that they'll be successful. So I think it's really important. I think it's really important for schools to build that relationship with families, not just one time, like, oh, come to the school, right? But be responsive and make sure that families know how important it is for them to feel welcomed and come to the school and be a part of their child's education.
But what do you do about children who aren't getting that? How do you solve that problem?
So when I first opened my school here, parent power is one of the pillars, and we would have monthly meetings with families. We'd also have parent coffees, and the first meeting I had was where we named the school. So parents get to choose the name and choose the 5th core value. And I had knocked on, thousands of doors because we didn't have a marketing budget. So to recruit families to come to my school, I had to knock on thousands of doors. I had done over 100 home visits of our families, and our teachers had done home visits of the 300 students. So when I had my first meeting, I thought, okay, everyone's going to show up. We've done home visits. We have these relationships. And I only had 20% of families. And oh my gosh, my goal was to at least have 85%. And I called my boss at the time, who's the founder of Rocket Ship. I said, what do I do? I only have 20% of families. He's like, well, you gotta show them that this is really important. You got to get to 85% by the end of the week. I'm like, well, how am I going to do that? He's like, you're going to keep calling and holding meetings and listen to your families about what they need to come to the school, and have your teachers reach out. So we ended up getting to 85% attendance. I had to listen to families, though. They're like, Brittany, you held this meeting on a Tuesday at 4:30. What parent can get there if we're working? 20% of your families. And you didn't provide any kind of any meals. They won't, meals or childcare. And so when I listened to the families, it was Wednesday nights at 6 worked for my families. Make sure that there was some sort of food there, right? So they took over that, and we'd sell hot dogs or whatever they chose every month. There was childcare, and then there was also a meeting in the morning on Thursday mornings. Again, childcare. There's some kind of breakfast. So it was me just being responsive to families and showing them that it's important. And the families, the 15% that weren't there, making sure that I was reaching out and working with them. So there's always someone that is working with. Very rarely have I met a child that there's not someone in their life that is taking care of them. There's someone. There is always someone.
Wisconsin school start date is set by statute to begin after September 1. The incumbent has attempted to bypass the start date with rule changes. Where do you stand on school start dates?
I think that's a a local control issue, I would say. And so I would be welcoming if they want to start earlier or whatever makes sense for that district. And if they needed me to support them in that, I could talk with them.
What is your view on DEI and K-12 education?
So DEI is something that is for local control again, where the local control of DEI and what their vision is for that and their goals is a local control issue, and I support that.
Okay. Given Milwaukee's reading crisis, would you support an all-city, all-government, all-sector, all-adult hands reading imperative for K-3 students?
All hands on, is that what that means?
Yeah.
Of course, that's what I've said. I'm like, why aren't we all going into the schools and helping? I would love that. I would love that to be a whole focus of Milwaukee. Everyone leaning in and supporting, because our kids deserve it.
I'm going to ask
Whoever asked that question, I'd love to talk to you later. Whoever's idea that was.
Should the mayor of Milwaukee appoint the MPS school superintendent?
Oh, I think someone from his team is here. What do you think? Should he appoint them? I think right now, I think the board hired, and those are the rules right now. So I think
You agree with that?
The board, I hope that the board is going to be supportive of the superintendent and allowing the superintendent to have leeway in the way she wants to be able to lead and support, not just leeway, just support her. I think there could be some changes with all of that, but I don't know if it's the mayor to appoint. Hopefully the mayor will have a good relationship. I know he's, yeah, so I don't know about appointing, probably not.
Okay, I've already gone over my time here with Erin. So thank you all for your
Thank
questions.
you.
Sorry we couldn't get through all of them.